Greetings, friends. My name is Pavlo Shtermach, and now we'll unveil the top news of these days. The Russians launched a new attack on the Kharkiv region. Vovchansk has been shelled since night. The population is being evacuated from the city and surrounding settlements due to Russian shelling, Tamas Gambarashvili said.
Now we are evacuating civilians. The majority of people are living in their own cars. But at the same time, together with Humanitarian Center, we are organizing the removal of those locals who do not have their own cars. We are working together with volunteers and the police. We are taking them out of Vovchansk and nearby settlements. Tamas Gambarashvili, head of the Vovchansk City Military Administration, in an interview with Gromadzki Radio.
According to the military administration of the city, the evacuation is performing due to the fact that the Russian army is now massively shelling the city. Locals say that such shelling has never been seen before, so it is dangerous to be in Vovchansk at the moment. The head of the military administration noted that starting at 3 a.m., the occupiers attacked with guided aero bombs, artillery, and fire from rocket salvo systems. At least 2 civilians died and 5 injured due to the Russian shelling, and also there is information about massive destruction in the city. At the same time, the head of Kharkiv Region Military Administration, Oleksiy Nyugubov, reported that there were unsuccessful attempts by the subversive intelligence groups to break through the border. The armed forces of Ukraine confidently hold their positions there. The enemy group does not pose a threat to Kharkiv. Its forces are sufficient only for provocations in the northern direction. Earlier, ISW reported that Russia had assembled a 50,000 soldier group near the northern borders of Ukraine for the storming of Kharkiv. 31,000 are located in the Belgorod region, over 10,000 in the Kursk region, and over 8,000 in the Bryansk region. I advise you to look at the map and understand that from Kursk to Bryansk to Kharkiv is at least 200 kilometers. Therefore, it is more a reserve than an attack group. But I must admit that the information time for this attack is very good. Friday before the weekend. Now, for 3 days, everyone will talk about the fact that Russians are allegedly going to Kharkiv, although in fact, if you look at the map, they have advanced at most 1 kilometer on 2 sections of their border. At the same time, they have not even established themselves there, and it is not known what will happen on Monday. The simulation of the attack on Kharkiv completely cancels out the Russian failure in Chasiv Yar. The Russians wanted to capture the city by May the 9th, but like all the Russians' plans, they could not. That's why they went north. But for now, indeed, the Russians are trying to go to Kharkiv and create a gray zone. Well, we were ready for it.
Russia began a new wave of counteroffensive action in this direction. Ukraine met them there with our troops, brigades and artillery. It is important that they can increase and add forces in this direction. This is a fact, but our military and military command knew about it and calculated their forces in order to meet the enemy with fire. Now there is a fierce battle in this direction with artillery fire. From what I know, at 7 a.m. we met them with the fire, and the main thing is that we stopped the enemy with artillery fire at that time.
Let's remind that the Kremlin conducted an informational attack for a very long time before this military one. Russians mass media have been talking about the march to Kharkiv for almost a month. At the same time, they also talked about Sumy. The speaker of the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine, Andriy Demchenko, reported that in the Sumy region, several sabotage and intelligence groups of the Russian occupiers were discovered every week. And now they went on a direct assault, a favorite tactic of the Russians. Soon, maybe we will see meat assaults there too. European intelligence services have warned their governments about the threat of acts of sabotage organized by the Russian Federation across the European continent. The Financial Times reports this with reference to the words of 3 European intelligence agencies. The Russian Federation began to actively plan to cause damage to the infrastructure of Europe through explosions and arson. At the same time, possible civilian casualties in Russia are not alarming, FT sources report. Earlier, the head of the Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution of Germany, Thomas Haldenwang, reported on the active espionage activities of the Russian Federation in Germany. We must proceed from the fact that Russia is quite ready to organize sabotage in Germany, he said. According to him, Russia now feels comfortable conducting operations on European soil with a high potential for harm. One senior European official said information was being passed through NATO security services about clear and convincing Russian abuses that were coordinated and widespread. In his opinion, it is time to raise awareness and focus on the Russian threat of violence to European territory. Earlier, NATO released a statement expressing its deepest concern about the increase in malicious activities of the Russian Federation on the Allied territory. Increasing concerns about Russia's intentions to inflict physical harm on its opponents follow a series of accusations against the Russian Federation in disinformation campaigns and hacking attacks. Recently, Germany promised consequences for Moscow due to a hacker attack on Social Democratic Party in 2023. The situation is also still unfolding around the scandal over Russia's attempts to use far-right European politicians on the eve of the European Parliament elections. One intelligence official said that Moscow's subversive efforts should not be considered separately from other operations, noting that the increased activity reflects the Russian desire to exert maximum pressure across the entire front. According to him, Putin will now feel empowered and will try to push the dividing lines in Europe as much as possible on several fronts through disinformation, sabotage, or hacker attacks. The escalation of Russian intelligence aggression also reflects Russian spies' desire to assert themselves after their worst setback since the collapse of the Soviet Union. But Europe is not standing idle. Within weeks of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, more than 600 Russian intelligence officers operating under diplomatic cover in Europe were expelled, crippling the Kremlin's spy network on the continent. There has also been a key strategic shift. So-called special impact committees are coordinating intelligence operations for the Kremlin across countries, bringing together the disparate efforts of intelligence agencies and other Kremlin players who previously worked separately. Due to intensification of Russian operations, security services are on high alert for threats. Warnings of increasing danger from the Federation arose after a number of incidents involving the role of Kremlin agents. In particular, 2 people were arrested in Bavaria on suspicion of preparing an attack on military and logistics facilities. At the end of April, in the UK, 2 men were charged with starting a fire in the warehouse where humanitarian aid supplies for Ukraine were stored. British prosecutors accused them of working for the Russian government. Meanwhile, in Sweden, security services are investigating a series of recent train accidents that may be acts of sabotage too. The Norwegian intelligence service discovered several agents of the Russian Federation who were operating in the west of the country and could be preparing sabotage. Russia is also working intensively on the information front. According to EU versus Disinfo, over the past 9 months, the number of fake messages about European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and EU High Representative Josep Borrell has increased significantly. In addition to mocking cartoons depicting Borrell as Joseph Goebbels, the search also included fabricated articles on lookalike websites of well-known media. Recently, following the publication of Borrell's book Europe Between Two Wars, another pro-Kremlin media campaign began targeting Europe, Africa, the Middle East, and even Latin America. And believe me, Russia always acts the same way. Information attacks are followed by hybrid ones, and then with military ones. Therefore, no country in the world can feel calm while there is a dictatorial regime in Russia. Ukraine, when a full member of the EU, will certainly become stronger. However, the integration of our country will simultaneously strengthen the European Union itself. The key thing that unites us with Europe is values. And after Ukraine joins the EU, we will have one of the largest armies with practical experience of resisting the full-scale aggression that is significantly superior in terms of numbers, resources, and finances. Ukraine will strengthen the EU with its many years of experience in effective self-defense against Russia, a well-known expert in inciting regional military conflicts, as well as planning and spreading propaganda around the world. Today, the Ukrainian military has practical experience of working in real combat conditions with such a variety of tools and equipment that no other country, not only in Europe but also in the world, has. Our IT specialists can be already extremely useful to the EU in the field of cyber protection and the application of the latest technologies. Strategic communications experts have unique expertise in countering Russia's propaganda machine and persistent psyops. NATO is already changing its approaches and adapting its strategy in accordance with the combat practice of Ukraine, and the European Union is rethinking the strategy and tasks for its military and defense complex. The previous wave of enlargement has already turned the EU into the largest integrated market in the world. Numerous new trade and financial flows have opened up, new value-added chains have been formed, new industries have opened, and thousands of new jobs have been created. The inflow of foreign direct investment as a percentage of the GDP of the new EU members doubled from 2004 to 2012. This led to a general increase in welfare across the EU. Accordingly, their future expansion should also be considered taking into account traditional opportunities for strengthening the competitiveness of the EU economy. It is mainly about increasing opportunities for trade, strengthening energy security, increasing sustainability, greater security of supply chains, a wider choice of goods and services, etc. And most importantly, less dependence on the EU single market on said countries in raw materials and components for goods due to the potential inclusion of future new EU members in supply chains or the transfer of production to these very countries. Taking into account the experience of previous years as well as the potential of the Ukrainian economy and the influence of the European economy on the post-war recovery of our country, we can say that EU single market will continue to develop rapidly with Ukraine. Of course, joining the EU will have its price. According to the calculations of the European Research Center Bruegel, the total annual cost of Ukraine's integration will be approximately 0.13% of the EU's GDP. And our planned entry may also require an increase in the EU budget by about 20%. Of course, there remains the fact of a major war and daily destruction, which significantly complicates any predictions. And therefore, the sooner the war ends with a Russian defeat, of course, the sooner it will be possible to predict the near future. After all, value-wise, politically and economically, Ukraine is already an inseparable part of the free and strong European family. That concludes our today's video. Thank you for watching. Stay updated. Comment and like and subscribe to our UATV English channel on YouTube for more news from Ukraine. Your support is what really matters for us. Goodbye.